The thing is, I did not think I was destroying my marriage. I thought I was waking it up. 2 compliments, one hand on my waist, and of course my husband made it look like I had committed a crime. I had spent months trying to make him show fire. By the next morning, he showed me paperwork instead. My name is Elspeth Wren. I was 36, and I worked as a senior image consultant for luxury retail executives. The thing is, I did not think image was vanity. I thought image was survival with better lighting, and of course that made me dangerous before I admitted anything was wrong. The showroom smelled of steamed wool, perfume samples, and glass cleaner after closing. I stood between 2 mirrors, moving 1/2 an inch so my reflection looked taller near the velvet chair. 2 mirrors. 1 late client bag. No crime, I told myself. That was how I saw rooms. I knew where power stood before anyone took off a coat. I knew when a woman wanted to look expensive instead of pretty. I knew when a man needed his jacket to say authority because his voice could not. Adrian came in through the back door carrying Thai food and my black flats. My husband had remembered that the patent heels looked better than they felt. He placed the flats near my chair and said he thought my feet would be hurting by now. Years before, during my first major executive styling event, the display wall cracked after midnight. I had sat on the showroom sofa with pins in my mouth and fear in my throat. Adrian stayed until morning steaming jackets, fixing the wall and labeling accessories while I slept for 20 minutes under a coat. When the client praised me, he stood near the exit and smiled like that was enough. Back then, I called that love. Now I called it useful. At home, his silver company badge lay beside the coffee machine. Adrian had the company anniversary invitation open on his phone, parking details, dress code, guest registration, photo schedule. He read every line like a missed comma could ruin the night. He tried to put his hand on my waist while passing behind me in the kitchen. I moved away and told him I hated being touched when I was tired. He apologized before the sentence had cooled. That bothered me. Not because he touched me, because he stopped so easily. My phone lit up beside the sugar bowl. Bianca had written that calm husbands aged women faster than bad lighting. I smiled before I turned the screen down. Adrian saw the smile. Of course he did. Quiet people see the things you wish were smaller. He asked softly whether something had changed between us lately. Not what had happened, not who I was texting, just what had changed. I heard him asking for a report. I heard my mother saying that calm men left before they shouted. I told him work was heavy and that he was making a normal evening serious. He picked up the silver badge, rubbed one thumb along the edge, and placed it face down on the counter. The industry mixer was held in a narrow event space above a menswear store where the air smelled of citrus gin and wool coats drying near radiators. The thing is, I went there as Adrian's wife, but I entered like someone checking if the room still knew my name. Of course, I told myself that was normal. 2 name tags. 1 compliment. Nothing anyone could call betrayal yet. Adrian wore a dark jacket and stood beside me with that careful posture he used in professional rooms. He was polite to everyone. He remembered names. He asked one buyer about his son's exam because the man had mentioned it 3 months earlier. People liked that about him. They called it warmth. I saw something else that night. I saw a man who made himself useful before anyone could reject him. A vendor named Callum came over near the display of leather samples. He had bright eyes, a soft voice, and a way of looking at women like the rest of the room had stepped back. He complimented my dress first, not my work. That should not have mattered. It did. Adrian smiled when Callum said it. A polite smile. No heat in it. No warning. No claim. I hated him for giving me so much room to prove he did not care. Callum noticed the clasp of my necklace had twisted. He asked if he could fix it before the event photographer took pictures. Adrian was closer. I could have turned to my husband. I could have fixed it myself in the mirror near the bar. Instead, I tilted my head and let Callum's fingers move near the back of my neck. The room did not stop. Rooms almost never do when something ugly starts small. One woman looked at me, then at Adrian. Another smiled like she had found a private joke. Callum stepped back and said I was saved. Adrian said nothing. In the car, he waited until the traffic light near the station turned red. Then he asked why I had let Callum touch my neck after weeks of telling him not to put a hand on my waist in public. Specific. Factual. One named thing placed between us. That was Adrian's way. He did not come with fire. He came with the object. I told him he was turning a necklace clasp into a trial because another man had made him insecure. He asked if Callum had been messaging me. I said only about work. That was the first active lie with a clean shape. Callum had sent one message before we reached the car park. He had said the necklace suited my throat and that Adrian was lucky if he knew how to look. I had reacted with a heart before putting my phone in my bag. 1 heart. 2 seconds. No wound you could see. The next evening I met Bianca at a wine bar with gold mirrors behind the bottles. She wore a white blouse and the look of a woman who had turned divorce into a personality before it turned her into a quiet apartment. She asked what Adrian had done now. I told her about the necklace. I said he had acted like I let Callum undress me in the middle of the room. Bianca laughed and said men like Adrian needed little reminders. She said calm men only understood fire when smoke reached their own shirt. I told her not to be cruel. Of course I had already leaned closer. She said a reminder was not cheating. A colleague could fix a clasp. A man at a bar could buy a drink. A client could say I looked dangerous. If I stayed in control, she said, then Adrian had no right to call it betrayal. That word stayed with me. Control. Naomi sat with us that night. She had worked with me for years and knew when I was dressing hunger as theory. She laughed at first because Bianca laughed first. Then she asked whether Adrian knew these reminders were tests. I told her not to make everything sound like a therapy bill. Naomi looked down into her glass. Her silence had edges. At home, Adrian had left soup on the stove. The kitchen smelled of cumin and warm bread. His company badge sat beside his keys, face up again, neat and silver and obedient. I looked at it longer than I looked at the soup. He asked why I kept allowing other men the closeness I refused from him. He said he was not asking as a jealous man. He said he wanted to know if my body had become a room he was no longer allowed to enter. That was almost a good sentence. From another man, maybe it would have sounded like pain. From Adrian, it sounded planned. I told him he only reached for me when he wanted a room to believe we were fine. I said he touched my back at dinners, my waist near elevators, my hand when people were watching. But at home, he loved me through lists and soup and calendar notes. He did not answer quickly. That was how I knew the sentence had landed somewhere true. He said he may have done that. He said he may have used public gestures because private words failed him. Then he said that did not explain why I kept giving strangers the version of me I punished him for wanting. I opened the fridge even though I did not need anything. Inside were olives, oat milk, and the leftover lemon cake he had bought because I once said it tasted like hotel weddings. Bianca texted then and asked if the careful husband had survived his lesson. I turned the phone down too late. Adrian saw the movement. He did not ask. He took his bowl from the table and poured the soup into the sink without eating. By Friday, Naomi stopped answering the group jokes. Bianca told me Naomi had always been afraid of women who still had blood in them. I laughed because the line helped. Adrian clipped his badge to his jacket the next morning before work. I watched the metal flash near his name and thought about how much he liked belonging to rules. That afternoon, Bianca wrote that maybe the next reminder should happen where people could see it. Julian's promotion drinks were on a rooftop bar with glass panels around the edge and heaters clicking above every table. The air smelled of orange peel, wet wool, and the kind of city rain that made everyone stand closer than they needed to. The thing is, I did not go there planning to humiliate Adrian. I went there wanting proof. Of course, proof can look innocent when it first walks in. Adrian and I arrived together. He placed his hand near my back as we moved through the crowded entrance, not touching enough to claim me, not distant enough to be careless. That small carefulness made my teeth press together. I stepped half an inch away and told him he was hovering. Bianca saw it from the bar. She kissed my cheek and said I looked like someone who still got chosen. One sentence, 2 glasses behind her. No reason for it to matter so much. Mara was there too, though she had not been invited by me. Adrian's older sister worked near Julian's firm and knew half the table. She hugged Adrian first, then me. Her arms around me were polite, not warm. Julian had his phone out, taking small clips of drinks, skyline, people pretending cold air made them glamorous. Naomi stood beside him, smiling with her mouth but not with her eyes. A man named Mason came over after the first round. He was Julian's friend, broad-shouldered, easy, the kind of man who turned every sentence into a small performance. He offered his hand when I stepped down from the raised platform near the heaters. Adrian was closer, but Mason moved first. I took Mason's hand. His palm stayed at my lower back after I had already stepped down. 1 second, maybe 2. Long enough for Adrian to see. Long enough for me to see Adrian seeing. That was the point, though I did not call it that yet. Mason asked if I always looked this put together. I told him some people knew how to enter rooms properly. Bianca laughed. Julian's phone moved across us in a slow party clip. Adrian watched from near the table. His face did not change enough. That was what pushed me. Someone joked about work badges because Julian's promotion came with a new security pass. I looked at Adrian and said some men loved badges because badges told them who they were allowed to be. A few people laughed. I added that Adrian was careful with everything, even me, like I came with a company badge and safety instructions. The laugh came thinner this time. Bianca laughed first because Bianca always liked me sharp until the blade pointed somewhere real. Naomi lowered her glass. Mara turned her head toward Adrian. Adrian touched his jacket pocket. Earlier that day he had come from work, and the badge was still clipped inside. His fingers pressed the shape through the fabric, and for 1 second he looked less like my calm husband and more like someone holding a wound closed. I saw it. Then I stepped over it. I said other men seemed less afraid of treating me like a woman. Nobody laughed right away. Mason looked at me, then at Adrian, and the hand on my back disappeared. That should have told me something. Men like Mason enjoyed being admired. They did not enjoy being used in a room where the husband stayed standing. Adrian placed his drink on the table. He asked if we could speak near the stairwell. He did not raise his voice. The quiet was the point. It made the whole table listen harder. I followed him because not following would have looked like guilt, and I still believed I was winning. The stairwell smelled of cold concrete and lemon cleaner. Music came through the door in muffled pieces. Adrian stood 2 steps below me, so we were almost the same height. He said he was not hurt because Mason helped me step down. He said he was hurt because I had looked back to see if it damaged him. I hated how exact that was. He asked why I needed witnesses for his discomfort. He said I kept calling his pain insecurity because it let me avoid naming what I was doing. For 1 short breath, there was a door inside me. I saw Mason's hand leaving my back. I saw Bianca's laugh stopping too late. I saw Adrian touching the badge through his jacket, like it had become the only solid thing he could hold. I almost saw that he was not competing with Mason. He was standing in a room where his wife had turned his hurt into entertainment and then waited for applause. 2 stairs, 1 metal railing. No sentence I wanted to say. Then I closed the door. I told myself Adrian was good at this. He could make calm look noble and make me look cruel for wanting heat. I said he was punishing me for being visible. I said he only wanted private pain because private pain made him look patient. He looked tired then. Not angry. Tired. He said he was going back to the table and that I could decide what story I wanted the rest of them to remember. I followed him back with my chin high. At the table, Bianca asked if I was okay, but her voice had lost its shine. I told her Adrian had given a small speech about feelings. She smiled for me, but it came late. Julian put his phone away. Naomi asked if we should order food. Mara did not ask anything. She looked at Adrian, and he gave a small shake of his head, as if telling her not to start. That made me angrier than if he had complained. He had people protecting him now. Quietly. Neatly. As if I were a weather warning. The next morning, Mara called Adrian while I was in the bedroom doorway. He took the call in the kitchen, but I heard enough. She asked if he wanted her to keep pretending she had not seen the pattern. He said nothing for a long time. Then he said he was starting to write things down because talking had not changed anything. I told myself that meant he had become petty. Of course, it meant something else. Mara's house smelled of roast chicken, laundry detergent, and cinnamon candles. It was the kind of warm, ordinary place that made people think pain could be solved by sitting at the right table. The thing is, I disliked it before I took off my coat. Of course, I told myself it was because Mara had always looked at me like she was waiting for me to fail. Adrian stood in the hallway speaking to Mara's husband about the company anniversary. He said Graham Keller would be there with senior leadership and that the event mattered for the region. His voice had that careful work tone, the one that made every sentence feel polished flat. Graham Keller. I remembered him from a fundraiser the year before. He had shaken Adrian's hand and then looked at me like Adrian had brought proof of good taste. He had said Adrian had done well. I should have heard the insult. I liked being made into a prize. At dinner, Mara asked me whether work had been heavy. It sounded harmless until she added that sometimes heavy work made people careless with people who were still standing beside them. I smiled and told her she had always been gifted at making concerns sound like a warning label. Her husband changed the subject. Adrian did not. Later, while Mara cleared plates, Adrian stood with me near the hallway mirror. He said he knew he had not always made me feel wanted loudly enough. He said he thought staying, helping, remembering, and building a steady life had counted more than it did. That should have reached me. It almost did. But the hallway mirror showed me behind him, smaller, caught between family photos and a coat rack. I heard him asking me to accept quiet love and be grateful. I heard my mother again, saying calm men left without giving you a scene to remember. I told Adrian that husband maintenance was not romance. I said soup, keys, and careful hands did not make a woman feel alive. He looked at me like I had named something true and used it badly. On the drive home, neither of us played music. The road shone black under streetlights. He kept both hands on the wheel. At home, he finally named the pattern. He said this had happened with Callum, Mason, 2 client events, and now every conversation where another man gave me attention. He said I refused his touch, accepted it from others, then made him sound controlling when he noticed. I told him he sounded like a prosecutor. He said he was trying to understand whether he was still my husband or only the man standing near me while I auditioned replacements. That sentence had no theatre in it. It sat down between us and stayed. I tried to change tactics the next morning, not because I was sorry, because the room had started moving away from me. I told him I would stop joking in public if he stopped acting wounded every time a man spoke to me. I said we both had work to do. I made my voice calm, professional, fair. He asked if I understood that I was offering to stop cutting him only if he stopped bleeding where I could see it. I told him that was dramatic. The compromise died there. That evening, he stood in our bedroom closet with his company suit hanging on the door. The anniversary was 3 days away. I expected him to clip his silver badge to the lapel to check how it looked, because Adrian checked things before he wore them into important rooms. Instead, he took the badge from his jacket and placed it inside a plain envelope with the invitation card. No announcement, no speech, just the badge sliding into paper. I stood by the bed with one earring in my hand. The thing is, for one slow minute, I almost understood. The badge was not only a badge, it was his name, his work, the one room where people valued his steadiness without asking it to sparkle. He was not preparing to fight me at the company anniversary. He was preparing to keep some part of himself away from whatever I might do there. One envelope, 2 fingers smoothing the flap, No anger left to use. I almost saw that he had stopped trying to win the room back. Then I closed the door. I told myself he wanted me to see it. I told myself he was staging sadness in advance so I would behave. I put the second earring in and asked if he planned to attend his own company party as a ghost. He did not answer. Bianca texted that night and asked whether I had chosen the dress. I wrote back that I needed something that would make Adrian remember other men still looked. For the first time, Bianca did not reply at once. When her message came, it was only one line. She told me not to make it impossible to walk back. I read the word impossible twice. Then I deleted the thread preview from my lock screen. On the morning of the anniversary, Naomi sent a message saying she hoped the night went gently. Gently. I stared at that word while Adrian made coffee without asking whether I wanted any. Mara called him at noon. He took the call in the other room. When he came back, his face was still, and he placed his phone screen down beside the envelope with the badge. I asked if his sister had assigned herself guard duty. He said Mara cared about him. I said everyone cared about him when it gave them a reason to dislike me. He looked at me for a long second. Then he said no one had needed help with that lately. That was the first time his calm cut back. The hotel ballroom smelled of pine garlands, champagne and whiskey spilled somewhere near the bar. Gold lights hung behind the branded photo wall, and the company logo repeated across the backdrop in neat silver rows. The thing is, I knew exactly how rooms like that worked. Of course, that was why what I did there could not be called an accident. Adrian arrived beside me in a dark suit, without his badge clipped to his lapel. I saw the empty place before I saw anything else. I asked if he had forgotten who he belonged to tonight. He said he had not forgotten anything. His voice was calm but not soft. That difference bothered me. Soft calm could be pushed. This was another kind. Flat, clean, already packed. Senior employees came over during the first half hour. They shook Adrian's hand. They called him reliable, precise, the man who kept the region from collapsing when others lost the map. He smiled with real pride, small but present. Reliable, precise. Good words, maybe. They landed on me like dust. Bianca had told me earlier that some women became furniture beside men who were praised for being useful. I repeated that to myself while one of Adrian's co-workers told me I must be proud. I said Adrian was very good at keeping things in order. The co-worker smiled because she did not hear the edge. Mara did. She stood near the bar with water in her hand and watched me like I was holding a match. Then Graham Keller entered. Rooms rarely turn all at once. They adjust. A shoulder shifts. A laugh gets cleaner. Someone steps aside before being asked. Graham was 47, polished, and warmed by the kind of authority that made people forgive his closeness before he offered it. He shook Adrian's hand first. Then his eyes moved to me. He told Adrian that he had failed to mention his wife had the most expensive presents in the room. The compliment was for me, but it landed on my husband. I could feel it. I laughed and said Adrian was careful with expensive things, sometimes too careful to touch them. A few people nearby laughed because senior men laughed. Adrian smiled with his mouth only. Graham offered me champagne from a passing tray before Adrian could ask whether I wanted water. I accepted it. My fingers brushed the stem near Graham's hand. He noticed. Men like Graham lived from small permissions. He asked if company parties bored me. I told him they were only boring when nobody knew how to take control of the room. Adrian shifted beside me. That should have been enough. A sharp line, a small public wound. But the old reminders felt too small now. Callum had been a clasp. Mason had been a hand on my back. Those were little fires. This was Adrian's boss. This was hierarchy. This was the man whose approval moved through Adrian's work life like weather. If I wanted him to snap, this would do it. Graham guided me toward the photo wall. His hand touched my elbow first, then the small of my back, then my waist when the photographer asked us to move closer. I could have stepped away. I did not. I teach people how bodies read in photographs. A hand at the waist says permission. A turned shoulder says invitation. A laugh near the ear says the private part has already started. I knew every inch of what the camera would understand. Graham leaned close and said something about Adrian being lucky. I barely heard the words. I heard the room. I heard Bianca's old laugh in my head. I heard my mother saying, "Calm men leave before they shout." I looked over Graham's shoulder at Adrian. He was watching. Not with anger. Not with jealousy arranged in a way I could use. His face had gone quiet in a way I had not seen before, like someone had put a wall behind his eyes and closed the gate. That made me push harder. The photographer asked for one more. I placed my hand over Graham's where it rested at my waist. Not long. Long enough. A co-worker near the bar stopped speaking. Mara moved one step forward, then stopped when Adrian lifted one hand slightly without looking at her. Bianca was behind the bar area. At first, her eyes were bright. Then she saw Adrian's face, and the brightness went out. I said loudly enough for the nearby table to hear that some men knew how to touch a woman without making it feel like paperwork. That sentence was true in one place. Adrian had touched me in public like he was trying to prove we were steady. He had reached for my hand at dinners after private silence. He had placed his palm at my back when he wanted the room to believe we were still fine. He could not refute that, but the truth inside the sentence did not clean what I was doing with it. Adrian walked toward us. He did not touch Graham. He did not insult him. He did not pull me away. He asked if I wanted to leave with him now, while there was still something private left to protect. His final offer came without drama. That made it easier to ruin. I told him I was tired of leaving rooms because his pride could not survive another man standing close. Graham's smile changed then. It became smaller, more careful. He understood the scene had stopped being flirtation and had become a weapon. Men like Graham enjoyed heat. They did not enjoy liability. Adrian looked at Graham, then at me, then at Mara. He said he would handle it properly. No legal word, no threat. That was why the sentence worked. I told myself it meant he was beaten. I went to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. My phone shook in my hand. I texted Bianca and asked if she had seen his face. She answered only that I should go home. I asked if it looked powerful. No answer came. 2 messages. 1 closed stall. No applause. When I came back, Graham had moved to another group near the executive table. He spoke to a senior vice president with his body angled away from me. Adrian stood with Mara and Julian near the far side of the ballroom. Julian had his phone in his hand and was not filming anymore. The photographer posted the first company photo before midnight. Graham's hand was on my waist. My hand rested over his. Adrian was visible in the background, not blurred, not hidden, watching as if the room had already ended for him. Adrian left before dessert. He did not look back. The next morning there was no coffee on the counter. Adrian's side of the closet was half empty, and the plain envelope with the badge was gone. The thing is, I still thought he was trying to scare me. Of course, I thought silence was another kind of performance. At 9:12, I received a formal message from Helen Marks, the family attorney who had handled Adrian's parents' estate documents. She requested my presence at her office at 10:30 regarding temporary domestic orders and marital separation proceedings. I went in the cream coat I wore for difficult clients. Adrian sat in the conference room with Mara beside him. Helen Marks placed papers on the table in a clean stack. Simone, the legal assistant, stood near the printer with a blue folder against her chest. The first page said petition for dissolution of marriage. The next said motion for temporary exclusive possession of the marital home. Then temporary no contact and distance order. Then preservation notice for digital evidence. Then notice of related civil claim for reputational and emotional damages. The hearing date was 10 days away. I reached for the top page too quickly and knocked over a paper cup of water. Simone wiped it with 3 tissues and moved the cup farther from me. The evidence packet had the company photo, Graham's hand on my waist, my hand over his, Adrian in the background. It had Julian's rooftop video. It had Bianca's messages about little reminders. It had my own message saying I wanted to make him snap. Helen asked if I denied sending that. I said people exaggerated in texts. She placed the screenshot beside the photo. She did not argue. She did not need to. Before noon, Graham sent HR a statement saying I had initiated the closeness and that he regretted being placed in a marital conflict. When I messaged him, the message delivered once. Then his name went grey. I had to leave the house within 48 hours under the temporary order. The joint accounts were restricted until the hearing. Naomi stopped answering. Julian sent Adrian the original clips, Mara blocked me, and Bianca never replied to the bathroom message. Graham removed me from his professional contacts before lunch. At work, 2 clients moved their executive image sessions to another consultant without asking me why. I thought making Adrian angry meant I still had a hand on him. I thought if he snapped, he was still in the room with me. He did not snap. He gave my choices to people who printed them, stamped them, and told me where I could no longer stand. The silver badge appeared one last time in the evidence photo, clipped beside Adrian's name on the anniversary program. I made him watch another man touch what I had denied him, and he made the whole world stop letting me reach him.